Hey man, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bum you out. Shouldn't have brought it up. Darn it, I can be such a jerk sometimes.
Superman?
You know it.
How many times is that?
In total, counting the times I saw it in the theater, plus the times I've watched it streaming and on Blu-ray, 12, I think. How many times have you watched it?
12, I think.
The question I keep asking myself is, what was so hard about that?
What was so hard about
making that movie?
I mean, movies are hard to make.
Not like that. I mean, making a good Superman movie. A good Superman movie that is popular, that is accessible and appealing to a general audience, that represents all the stuff that all of us who have loved Superman all along fell in love with in the first place. Like, what's so hard about that?
A couple of points. First, I love this movie, but it's not like it's the first good Superman movie.
I know, I'm not saying that.
There have been good, popular Superman movies in the past. And I happen to know we're both admirers of Superman Returns, which isn't brand new, but only came out, 10 years ago?
Almost 20 years ago.
Jesus Christ! Well, anyway.
Superman Returns wasn't popular, though. We like it, but we're in the minority. And in between Superman Returns and this new one, we got the Zack Snyder version, which was underwhelming at best and fucking abominable at worst. Who looks at Zack Snyder and says, you know what he'd be good for? Superman.
That's my second point. It's not hard, relatively speaking, for skilled and creative people to make a good Superman movie. It's not that tough of a character to crack, but studio executives, the people in charge of picking what movies get made and which people make them, aren't interested in making a good Superman movie or a good anything movie. They just want to make money.
Good movies make money.
Not always. And anyway, what's good? It's subjective. Not everybody agrees what's good and what's not. Besides, that's not even the issue, because most studio executives aren't even thinking about what makes a good movie in the same subjective terms that the rest of us are. They see a movie as a product, and they see an audience as an exploitable resource. They aren't trying to make a movie that will entertain that audience, or touch them, or challenge them, or scare them, or make them laugh. All of those are secondary results to the main goal, which is to tap that resource for every last goddamn penny they can get out of it. They look at it like an equation. They study market research to see what people say they like. They add in a little something for the kids, a little something for the parents, a little something for the girls, a little something for the guys. They dumb it down as much as possible for the people who aren't even looking at the screen. And when it hits and makes a bunch of money, they take credit and give themselves raises, and when it bombs, they blame someone else and go back and fiddle with the knobs and try again with another one.
Those Zack Snyder Superman and Justice League movies didn't seem like that, though. One thing about them, they definitely didn't play like they'd been focus grouped to death.
No, but they still came out of that same process. You said, who looks at Zack Snyder and says he should make a Superman movie? Zack Snyder was a director with an established name and some buzz who had adapted comic books before and had made profitable movies. Nobody who hired him for that job ever thought, is his sensibility the right one for Superman? All they thought was how impressive it would look in the trailer when it said, from the director of Watchmen and 300.
You're right, that's the same reason fucking David Goyer got the job to write those movies. From the writer of Dark City and The Dark Knight.
Well, Batman Begins, anyway. He only has a co-story credit on The Dark Knight. Christopher and Jonathan Nolan wrote the screenplay.
That's why that one's so much better.
Right? But anyway, yeah, that's all they give a fuck about. They don't want good movies. They want ROI. If Batman and Robin had been a hit, Joel Schumacher would have spent the rest of his life directing schlocky, unfunny superhero movies. Howard Stern would have played the Scarecrow. Cameron Diaz would have played Harley Quinn. Nicolas Cage would have played Superman. But because they were leaning into comedy, they'd have gotten Kevin Smith to direct it as well as write it.
Does that mean Kevin Smith might not have made Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
Well, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been any benefits.
How does all that you just said account for the new Superman movie being so good and so popular, though?
James Gunn. He got the job the same way Zack Snyder did, by being a buzzy director with a track record of success. But there were two key differences. First, because Zack Snyder's version was such a failure on account of being mostly disliked by everyone except the worst people on the internet, the studio gave the next guy more creative control over the franchise in the hope he could turn it around and make it into the Warner Brothers equivalent of the MCU. And second, that next guy was James Gunn, who is the exact right guy for the job. But he didn't get the job because he's good. He got it.
So they could say, from the writer and director of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Exactly. What it boils down to is we got lucky this time. As we have in the past, I mean, there have been plenty of good and popular superhero movies so far this century. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, the Nolan Batman, the Matt Reeves Batman, Iron Man, Captain America, Black Panther, the Guardians trilogy, and those aren't the only examples. It's not like movie studios are incapable of making good stuff. It's just that once you get above a certain level in the pecking order, they aren't trying to do that first and foremost.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. How can we blame some of this on the audience, too? Because, sure, movie studios are run by soulless vulture capitalists who have never felt a genuine emotion other than greed or envy and have no respect for or understanding of art on any level. I'm with you on that 100%. But doesn't there also come a point where you have to turn to the general public and say, hey, you get what you pay for?
Sure, it's kind of a fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me situation. But even there, I think you ultimately have to place the responsibility with the studios. They're the ones who decided they needed to pander to the audience, and they're the ones that are so bad at it.
But the most vocal segments of the audience the studios are pandering to are also impossible to please. Even when they get it right and release a good movie, there's always going to be those fans out there who are complaining about the dumbest, nerdiest shit. Like with Superman. I've got no beef with people who just didn't dig the movie because it didn't work for them for whatever reason in terms of its plot or its characters, but these fuckers who started whining about the way Jor-El and Lara were portrayed deserve to be shoved down a soon-to-be permanently capped well, don't they?
Of course they do, and I've said for years that it should be legal to murder obnoxiously pedantic nerds by any cruel means your fevered imagination can conceive, but at the end of the day, it's not their fault. They only have the power they are given by people who give a shit what they think. If movie studios ignored them the same way their parents and better socialized peers do, there'd be no problem.
They're the loudest portion of the audience, though. That's the shitty part. They're the ones who are going to take to social media whenever something displeases them and demand satisfaction. So when a studio does make the, I agree, wrong-headed decision to try and please a particular audience, they aren't going to try and satisfy the people who want compelling characters and smart, engaging storytelling. They're going to try to please the dweebs who can't wait to pirate the 4K version so they can freeze frame it and zoom in and judge if the costumes are quote unquote right. That's why a good Superman took so long. That's why they're making it way harder than it needs to be to make good Star Trek and Star Wars too. Because they're enforcing this attitude on their creators of having to serve the fans when their attitude ought to be, fuck the fans. I mean, not literally.
Well, what takes place between consenting adults at conventions is nobody else's business, but I get what you're saying.
I just really want to blame the nerds for how long it took to get another good Superman movie.
I know you do, and that's a normal and healthy thing to want, but don't lose sight of the real enemy. And hey, look on the bright side. We got a great Superman movie, and it looks like the DC Comics movie franchise is in good hands.
Yeah.
For now. Who knows how long it'll last? What with all these rumors of yet another corporate merger possibly in the near future. If that happens, there'll be a whole new team of empty suits just waiting for one of the DCU projects to underperform enough to justify them taking a flamethrower to the whole thing and starting over yet again with something similar but just different enough that they can take credit for it.
Well, that's bleak. You just told me to look on the bright side. Now you're going to piss on the parade like that? After we finally got a good Superman?
Nobody stays good in this world.
Oh, I see what you did there. From that awful movie.